The Padgett Gospels. From the Image into the Substance, June 27, 1916. I am here, Jesus. I wish tonight to write upon a subject that is of interest to all humankind, and I hope that we'll be able to communicate and that you can receive the message. I desire to write on the subject of why the love of God, the love divine, is necessary for man to possess in order that he may become at one with the Father and an inhabitant of the celestial kingdom. Already I have explained what this divine love is, in contradistinction to the natural love, and that nothing but this love will make a man at one with God, and that no mere ceremony or belief in me as the Savior of men will effectuate that end. And now I will try to show you why this divine love is necessary, or as you learned men might say, show you the philosophy of the transformation of the mere man into the divine angel, which every man becomes who receives this love into his soul. In the first place, man, as you have been informed, is a creation of God, and is no greater than the component parts that enter into his creation, as they are in either their individual or aggregate qualities. And these parts are merely what God, in his act of creation, designed them to be. It must not be assumed that these parts, or any of them, are a part of God, or of his essence or qualities, for they are not, and are separate and distinct from him, and his qualities, as are the lower creation of his will, such as animals, vegetables, and mineral substance. The only difference is that man is of a much higher order of creation, and is, in one particular, made in the image of God, and no other of his creatures has this image in its creation. But nevertheless, man is no part of God, but is a distinct creation, and is, even in his best and purest state, only a man, having simply these qualities which were created in him at the time of his coming into existence. There are certain qualities which man possesses, such as love and wisdom and the reasoning faculties, which may be said to resemble God's attributes, and so they do, but yet they are not a part of God's essence or qualities. And so when man asserts that man is divine, or that he has in him even a portion of the divine nature, they are mistaken, for the qualities in them that appear to be of this divine essence are merely those which were created for the purpose of making the perfect man. And because of this misconception of man as to his inherent qualities, he has and does and will continue to neglect the opportunity to become possessed of this nature or essence of the Father, which he may obtain if he will pursue the proper and only method that God has provided for man to become at one with him. The universe of man can and will continue to exist, even though man may never become a partaker of this divine nature of the Father, and man will live and enjoy the happiness that was bestowed upon him at the time of his creation. He will not lose the perfect condition of this creation, after he shall have been separated from sin and error, his own creatures, but he will not be anything more than the perfect man, and in time to come he will not be anything less, and yet he will always, as long as he exists, remain distinct from the nature and essence of the Father, just as he was at the time of his creation, unless he obtains this divine nature and essence of the Father in the way that I have explained. The highest endowment of man, either in soul or heart or intellect, is merely that which belongs to him as a part of his creation, and is not the smallest part of the divine nature and quality of the Father. No part or portion of divinity enters into man's creation, no matter how divinely constituted man may appear to be, or how godlike he may seem in the greatness of his intellect or the extent of his love nature. So you see, man is as distinct from God and from his divinity as is the animal from man, and must forever remain so unless he follows the only way the Father has prescribed for him to obtain a portion of this divinity. Now all this shows that man, no matter how highly he may develop his intellect, or to what extent he may develop his moral and love nature, cannot become more than the mere perfect man that he was in the beginning. For he was, in the beginning, perfect in every particular, and as I have said before, God never makes a mistake as to the perfection of his creatures, even though in the case of man it appeared that he did, in giving him the great power of free will, which in its wrongful exercise has caused sin and evil to appear in the world of man's consciousness. Man was made finite, His capacity for exercising any and all of his qualities has limits beyond which he cannot possibly go. His intellect is bound by limits as determined by the law of God which controls it, and also his capacity for loving and for the enjoyment of his happiness. And though he live for all eternity, he cannot possibly extend or pass beyond these boundary lines of his creation. He cannot enter into the realm of the divine where limitations do not exist, and capacity for receiving knowledge and wisdom and love for progression is commensurate with the very fountainhead of God himself. Then such a being, the nature and limitation and capacity of man, it is apparent that he can never, by virtue of his creation and the qualities which he possesses, become a partaker of the nature and essence of God, unless he receives something in addition to these qualities. And he must receive this something from without. It will not do to say that there is within him, as an inherent part of him, that which, when developed, will make him a nature divine and a part of the essence of the Father, for this is not true. There is nothing in man of this nature, and it is impossible to produce an essence divine unless there be something from which it can be produced that in some degree has the nature of that essence. This would be the equivalent of producing something from nothing, which even God does not attempt to do. Thus, as man is thus limited, all that flows from the qualities and attributes which he possesses is necessarily limited. The enjoyment of his intellect, the pleasure of his love, the satisfaction of his reasoning power, and as a sum total, his capacity for happiness have their bounds. And further, the consciousness of immortality can never be his, either as spirit or mortal, even though he may strive for it to be. When man takes on the divine nature and becomes absorbed in the essence of the Father, he then becomes like unto the Father. And whatever his image of the Father may have been when he was mere man, he now becomes the real substance, and limitations and possibility become removed. Love sees no ending, intellectual development no boundaries, and happiness no limitations. Immortality becomes a thing of knowledge in the soul of a new creature having a divine essence of the Father. And until this new creature has taken place, and the transformation becomes a thing of reality, and the soul is made at one with God, man cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven, then no longer man, but now an angel. Now, as I have written you before, all this can be accomplished only by the operation of the new birth, that is, by the inflowing of the divine love of the Father. This love contains the essence of God's divinity, and when man obtains it, he is then of the same essence of the Father, and for the first time becomes a part of the divine and fitted to inhabit the celestial kingdoms. In no other way can man partake of this nature, and it does not require much reasoning to show the logical truth of this statement. For man, in his earthly affairs, and in his material experiments in producing compounds from elements, applies this same principle that I assert in my statement. The dough cannot be leavened unless leaven is placed in the dough. So you see that without this divine love entering into the soul, it will be impossible for a natural man to become the divine angel. Beliefs and creeds and doctrines and sacrifices cannot work this transformation, and even though the beliefs may be without doubt, and the creeds and doctrines satisfactory, and the sacrifice without end, yet they will all be futile to change the soul of the mere man into the soul of the divine angel. And all this in part is why man should seek to obtain the divine love and become an inhabitant of the celestial spheres. I have written enough for tonight, and I am pleased at the way in which you received it. So with all my love and blessing, I am your brother and friend, Jesus. The longings of the soul. Let me write a line. I am not going to write a long message, but one that is very short. You are now in condition to receive our messages, and I wish to write for a while of the importance of knowing the way to the celestial kingdom. You have been told that the only way to obtain the kingdom is by the divine love coming into your soul and changing it into a thing divine which partakes of the very essence of the Father himself. Well, this is the correct explanation of the operation of this love on the soul, but in order to get this love, there must be earnest supplication on the part of the seeker. A mere mental desire for the inflowing of the love will not suffice. This is a matter that pertains to the soul alone, and the mind is not involved, except, as you might say, to start the soul's longing in prayer. When you think that you are longing for this love and have a mere mental desire for its inflowing, the love will not come, because it never responds to the mere mind, and must always be sought for by the soul's longing. Many men have the intellectual desire for the love of God, and upon that desires rest, and believe that they have the love and that there is nothing further for them to do. But they will find themselves mistaken, and instead of possessing this love, they have awakened only the natural love, and in a way started it towards its goal of the purified soul, like the first parents before the fall. It is no easy matter to have these longings possess the soul, and men should not remain satisfied with these mere mental desires, for they will not be benefited by such desires except, as I say, in the way of having their natural love purified. The longings of the soul come only from a realization that this love is waiting to be bestowed, and then the soul must become active and earnest in its endeavor to have this love come into it, and only then does the transformation take place. From this you will see that the mere observance of a church sacraments may not arouse these longings of the soul. The devotee of the church may be ever so zealous in their attendance of its services, and in complying strictly with its requirements, and in performing all the duties which it prescribes, but it may all be mental process, the soul remaining unaffected. Only when the soul's longings are started into activity are prayers for God's love answered. So you'll see that a man may be apparently devout and full of zeal for his church and the teaching of his creed, and yet not be benefited, so far as the progress of the soul is concerned. Let not your desires be only of the intellect, but try to bring into activity the longing of the soul, and do not rest satisfied until a response shall come. And it will certainly come, and you will know that the love is present, working its transforming power upon the soul. That is all I desire to say tonight. I am pleased that you are now in a condition to receive our messages, and hope your excellent conditions will continue. With my love, I will say good night, your own loving grandmother, Anne Rollins. The divine essence can never be lost. November 10th, 1916. I am here, Jesus. I come tonight to tell you that you are in a better condition than you were last night, and in fact have been for some nights past. I desire to write you a message on the question of how the soul of a mortal receives the divine love, and what its effect is, even though subsequently his mind may indulge in those beliefs that may tend to prevent the growth of the soul. As you know, the inflowing of this love is caused by its bestowal by the Holy Spirit in response to sincere prayer and longing. I mean prayer and longing for the love itself, and not prayers for the material benefits that men more often and more naturally, as they believe, ask for and desire. The prayers of mortals for those things that they may tend to make them successful and happy in their natural love are answered also, if it be best that they should be. But these are not the prayers that bring the divine love or cause the Holy Spirit to work with men. As the prayers of the sincere, earnest souls ascend to the Father, that soul becomes opened up to the inflowing of this love, and the soul's perceptions enlarge and change, come in rapport with the conditions or influence that always accompany the presence of this love, and consequently its entrance into the soul becomes easier, and its reception more perceptible to the soul's sense. The more earnest the prayer and sincere the longing, the sooner faith comes, and with this faith the realization that divine love is permeating the soul. When once the divine love finds a lodgment in a soul, it, to the extent that it receives the love, becomes, as it were, a changed substance partaking of the essence of the love. And as water may become colored by an ingredient foreign to itself, and which changes not only its appearance, but also its qualities, so this divine love changes both the appearance and quality of the soul, and this change continues ever thereafter. The natural qualities of the soul and the essence of the love become one and united, and the soul is made altogether different in its constituency from what it was before the inflowing of the love. But this only to the extent of the love received. As this love increases in quantity, the change and transformation becomes correspondingly greater. Even at last the transformation may and will become so great that the whole soul becomes a thing of this divine essence and partake of its very nature and substance, a being of divinity. When once this love enters and truly possesses the soul and works the change mentioned, it, the love, never leaves nor disassociates itself with the soul. Its character or divine essence never changes back to that of the mere natural love. And so far as it is present, sin and error have no existence, because it is just as impossible for this essence and sin and error to occupy the same parts of the soul at the same time as it is for two material objects to occupy the same space at the same time, as your philosophers say. Divinity never gives place to that which is not of the divine. Man is working towards the attainment of the divine when he pursues the way provided for obtaining divine nature. And as he advances and obtains a portion of this love, no matter how small, he can never retrace his steps to the extent of ridding himself of this transforming essence, and again becomes without its presence. But this does not mean that a man may not lose the consciousness of the existence of this essence within his soul, for he frequently does. The indulgence of his carnal appetites and evil desires will place him in such condition that he may cease to have a consciousness of the existence of the divine love in his soul, and to himself. It will as if he had never had any experience of the change that I speak of. And so, while this love can never be eradicated by the evils that man may indulge in, or by the mental beliefs that he may acquire, yet the progress of this love in his soul may be checked and become stagnant, as if the love were not there, and sin and error may appear to be the dominant elements of his life and being. But yet, when once possessed, the love cannot be crowded out of his soul by sin and error, no matter how deep and intense they may be. I know this may seem strange and impossible to man's intellect, and not in accordance with what has been attributed to me as a teaching that a soul may be lost. Nevertheless, a soul that has once received this divine essence cannot lose it, though its want of realization of the presence of this love, and its dormant condition caused by sin and error, and misdirected beliefs may delay the manifestation of its existence and life for a long time. With my love and blessings, I will say good night and God bless you. Your dear brother and friend, Jesus.